Mm-hmm. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thursday. You guys, tomorrow's Friday. You almost made it through the week. Fantastic. Congratulations to everybody for making it this far. and still wanting to jump in and join us for TLD Cast. Thank you guys so much. We are following 3 days of fantastic guests with our fourth fantastic guest, Miss Shannon Tipton. How are you, Shannon?
I'm very good. It's a fabulous day.
Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. Give me 2 seconds to just run through some commercial stuff, and then we'll jump right back into it. How about that? I just wanted to tell everybody, if you're new to this, or if you're listening to the podcast, or you have never joined us before in any of the different arenas and don't know what in the heck this is, somebody just invited you to, we are the Training, Learning, and Development Community. That is where everything starts. We focus everything we do on the community first. Everything else that we do just is a way to support that community. So this is the broadcast, the TLD Cast. And we are here every morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. UK time. And we do have UK representation today. Thank you, Joe Cook, for jumping in and hanging out with us. We probably have others, but I didn't see you in the chat. But always welcome everyone from the UK as well. We also do a chat. This used to be called TLD Chat, but now the chat has moved over into the text-based chatting format inside of Slack. So whether you know what Slack is or not, it's a great place to go and continue these conversations 24/7 and engage with a professional community that is extremely valuable. So if you have never experienced that before, give it a shot. Try it out. We're all here to help you figure it out if you're new to it. So be sure to do that. Also, click the invite button at the top of the chat, and you can send out a quick link to what we're doing today here to this particular TLD cast to all of your friends and colleagues. We also have a podcast. We take the audio from each of these episodes and we turn those into a podcast. And you can get those with your favorite podcasting application. Tons of great things going on. Before we get started, I do just want to share what is happening tomorrow as well. We don't normally do panels. But we are super excited about tomorrow's panel. This week, today in particular, being International Women's Day, we kind of inadvertently planned it to be Women's Week here in the L&D world in TLDC. And tomorrow we wrap the whole week up with a fantastic panel of L&D professionals, of women that work in our industry. And I know there are plenty more of you out there, so I hope you will join us and just be a part of that conversation. We can only fit so many people in at one time, at least in the video, that is. So thank you all for volunteering and jumping in and doing all of that fun stuff. And with that, I will just go ahead and say hi again to Miss Shannon Tipton. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us today.
Long time no visit.
That's right. It's been a long time.
It has been.
Yep.
And I'm sorry about that. Travel has just gotten me.
It happens. It's what we all do, right? We're here to do the work that we do and to just try to get better at it. So
do that thing you do.
Yes, that crazy thing we do.
Cue song.
So, you know what I like to do is just start by letting our guests introduce themselves. So for those who may not know you, I can't imagine people have not run across your website or seen you present or something, but just in case, give us a little update on who Shannon Tipton is.
Okay. Shannon Tipton, that's me. Learning Rebels, learningrebels.com. And what I do is I work with organizations to help build better training for their humans, the humans in their organizations that may be held hostages behind terrible training design. Most recently in the last year, 2 years or so, I've been focused heavily on the microlearning space and working with organizations to do that. An example of that is that I was recently in Boston with a client, and they have some very large macro training that they needed to scale down and put a lot of it into microlearning, which was really important for what they're doing. I can't really talk about what they do, but it was really important to what they're doing. And so I went in there and I did that for them. So that was a lot of fun. We had a good time. Boston's always a fun place to visit.
Indeed.
Yes.
But we didn't say that right. Isn't it Boston or something like that?
Boston.
Boston.
Boston. It's more through the nose. Park the car.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I got to work on my.
There you go.
My English, not an accent, but our regional accents, I believe, is what we refer to that as, right?
That's right. So I've been having fun in that space for a while, and I just feel really passionate about helping organizations take the training that they have and apply it to the business. How are we helping the business? That's the big question. Yep. And that's always the big question to my clients is, okay, well, that's great, but how is it helping the humans within? Is it helping your business improve? And just keep hammering until they finally get, oh, she's serious about this question. Yes, I am.
We've never had somebody come in and talk about that from a learning and training perspective. It takes a while to hammer on it. We had Kathy Moore on yesterday, and of course, she talks a lot about that as well.
Yeah.
So it's always fun to see that our industry, and the more and more people that I talk to, the more I do hear those conversations. And we are having those conversations with the clients that we work for and the others that we talk to in our industry. So it's fun to see us as a whole, as an industry, starting to make that shift, which is good.
Yeah, it is for sure. I want to say I remember when, but unfortunately it still is today, is when I talk to a training person or even a organization and they say, oh, this training, don't touch this training because this training really works. And I say, oh, awesome. Why? Oh, because people really like it. Thunk. Oh no, we need a better reason than that. And they say, no, the feedback that we get is that they really enjoy it and it means something to them. Okay, I need more. I need more than that. That does not make success. We all of the research that you do shows that people liking, the correlation between a level 1 and actual business improvement is nil, in case you didn't know that. So there's no correlation there. And it's a hard conversation to have, especially with businesses that really want to do the right things and give training that is enjoyable, but not thinking about the overall business impact.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you just to hold that thought for a minute because we really do want to go back and talk about that. But what I really want to ask you is what I've been asking everybody that is a guest on the show is, how did you get into this crazy business of learning and development? We've been calling it origin stories with our guests. And so I'm curious to know what yours is. How did you stumble into this crazy industry?
My origin story, stumble is probably an accurate word, I think, for most people. I don't know many training and development people who said, oh, gee, one day when I grow up, this is what I want to do. I don't think anyone's actually said that. So I actually have a business background. I worked in the restaurant industry, and I worked in the restaurant industry for a long time. And I was in operations. I was actually kind of high up the food chain. And I decided that I got tired of looking at spreadsheets all day. P&Ls or profit and loss statements are important things to any business, but it wasn't something that floated my boat. And so when I went back through what I did as far as my job role was concerned, and part of my job role was helping franchisees develop their business models. Well, that I enjoyed. Okay, so how can I take that and apply doing something that I felt passionate about? And so the natural arc to that was to move into the training department and see what sort of an impact that I could have in that space. And that was 25 years ago, believe it or not. And so it's and back in those days, you didn't have the internet to help you. So you had to depend on whatever tribal knowledge was out there. And fortunately for me, I do have a business background. So is automatically asking people, why are we doing this? Because this makes no sense to the people in the field. It makes no sense to the business owners. I don't understand. So I automatically entered the profession asking, why do we do this?
And so it is, how did you do that? So this is always the next follow-up question is, because everybody kind of comes from that different spot, but when you finally decided that that was the direction you wanted to go, what did you decide to do? Some people decide, I'm going to go get a master's degree or go get another degree in it. Others just learn on their own and just, practice and get good at it. What did you do? What was your sort of the tactic at that point?
I did not go back to school. So I'll be honest about that. I not to get a degree, I'll say that. So I didn't go back to school to get a degree. I did go back to school to focus because I wanted to learn more about organizational development. I wanted to learn more about adult learning. I wanted to understand why we do the things we do, as far as an industry. My list of certifications is long. And when I go back, some of it's kind of ugly, if I think about some of the actual training that I went through, which is woefully out of date now. So if I go back and I look at, and I have some of the materials, if I go back and I look through some of those materials, I'm like, oh my God, we're teaching this to people. Why are we teaching this to people? So I did a lot of reading and just a lot of talking, to others. And this upcoming year at ICE will be, I want to say, my 12th time being at ICE. Wow. as a participant. And, everything that I get from that conference, I always try to learn something new. I always try to attend different sessions. And I think that sort of learning curiosity, if you will, is really what drove me to understand the industry better.
Awesome. I love that. And it is very common, and everybody has that different path to go down when they're getting into this field. And I get this question a lot. I see it online a lot, and it's, do you need a degree? Do I need to go back to school, or do I, should I get a certificate and all of that? And it's such a tough question because it's very personal. I mean, I think I can help people walk through making those decisions, but that's why I always like to ask just and dig a little bit deeper with our guests, because I think it helps our audience and our community, those folks that are maybe struggling with that, just to kind of hear how other people did it. And hopefully that's valuable to somebody.
Yeah. And I think the advantage that I had then that perhaps a lot of people do not have now is the lack of technology. So I couldn't just quickly Google something and have a regurgitation of 500 websites from which to choose. So I had to be very careful in my research. So I had to do my own reading. I had to formulate my own opinions. I didn't have baggage to fall back on. I didn't have, so-and-so on Twitter says XYZ, so therefore it must be true. You really had to go and say, all right, this is what I want to learn about right now, and go off and read a book or two and come up with my own opinions without it being diluted, if you will, by somebody else's opinion. And not to say that I do not send me emails Okay. I'm not saying that we should not listen to the people who are out there. There are lots of people out there who have bigger brains than mine. I just say that we need to listen, learn, then do your own research. And that's something I've always advocated.
Yeah, it's awesome. Kara dropped in a really great question, and this might be a bit of a left turn, but I think it's a great thing that we just jump into it. And she said, I listened to your Good Practice podcast episode, and I loved your definition of micro-learning with a performance lens. What is one myth you would like to bust and one fact everyone should know about micro-learning?
One myth. Okay, we'll start there. Well, it kind of goes hand in hand. Okay. And thank you for the question, Kara. It's not chunking. I'll just bam, we'll drop that out there.
All right.
It's not chunking, and that is the biggest thing I get. So people will say, "Well, what's the difference?" Well, the difference is that when we talk chunking means that there is a continuation. It's a continuation of something. So if you have and I'll just take video, and that's the other myth. Microlearning is not video, but I'm going to use video in this example, is that if you have an hour video and then we chunk it into 4 15-minute parts because it's long, that's great. And we should do that. And we should do that to manage people's cognitive load. So there's no not saying that chunking is bad. However, when we put it into microlearning terms, what happens then is that I have to watch part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 in order to understand the whole. And that's not microlearning. So microlearning then would say, I'm going to take that hour video and I'm going to turn it into 4 15-minute stories, if you will, or moments of learning, each of which have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I can watch part 1 and I can walk away, learn from it, take action from it. I can watch part 2, learn from it, take action from it, and move on. So that's the biggest key when it comes to understanding microlearning at this moment.
They're standalone. So could somebody do part 2 without having done 1 and then do 1 and still be pretty good?
And Brent gets the gold star of the day. Yes, yes. That's exactly what it means, is that I should be able just to take any one of those 4 nuggets, learn something, and continue on with my day. I'm not dependent on anything that comes before or after in order to make me successful. Microlearning is all about the do. So if we talk about the fact part of the question, so microlearning is all about the do. What can I do? What am I supposed to accomplish after participating in whatever is in front of me as far as microlearning is concerned? So we're helping people within businesses achieve a specific outcome. And so what is that do? So that's what I ask people all of the time when they're thinking about, well, we need to turn this into a microlearning object. Okay, well, what is it that people are supposed to do at the end of it? Well, they're supposed to know. Now, that ain't good enough. So what is it that they're supposed to do? So I think that when we talk about myth and fact, that kind of rolls it all into one.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. And it's interesting that this is such a great segue. This whole conversation today, it fits so nicely with, it rolls off of what we talked about yesterday with Kathy Moore and their action mapping and all of that. It all blends into that idea of doing. What is it that people need to get done, and how do they do it, and how do we help them, and how do we help them get there? But that struggle that you mentioned with customers, clients, whether they're internal or whether you're a consultant, we do have to constantly fight that urge from those on the other side of the table to want to say, well, don't they need to know this first? Shouldn't we give them a bunch of knowledge first, right? And shouldn't they have to know all of these things first and then go do?
Right. And I'm reading in the comments, and thank you guys. I am reading your questions, and so keep them coming. So if I go down into address that point, Brent, here is that, can it be chunky? So I saw that. I think that came from Kara. Yes, it can be chunky. And really quickly, if you will humor me here, is if you think about microlearning as you've got a bowl of M&Ms in your hand. Okay, you got a bowl of, sorry for my overseas people, you got a bowl of sweeties in front of you. So what happens all together in this bowl is a bowl of deliciousness, and I can choose to consume all of this bowl of deliciousness if I want to. That's my choice. Okay. However, I could also choose then to take one of those, nuggets, one of those little M&Ms. Yeah, M&Ms. Perfect. Thank you.
Product
placement.
I
could choose to take product placement. So I could choose to eat one and still feel satisfied, right? And so, yes, microlearning can be chunky in that regard. The bowl is the curriculum container, if you will. So if the bowl is sales training, okay, each one of those M&Ms within that bowl could represent a piece of knowledge that a salesperson has to have. It could be negotiation skills, how to cold call, how to enter something into the CRM tool, body language, product knowledge. It could be a whole bunch of little things that when we put them together, it's a great big bowl of deliciousness. But if I take them one by one, I'm still learning something and I'm still doing something.
Yeah, I think it works, I think, and I want to say because of adult learning theory and all that, but I don't know what the real background is on it. I'll just speak to my own personal experience in that I liked the doing. Like when I'm learning something new, I don't want to sit and get a bunch of knowledge first. I want to do whatever it is I'm trying to do. I want to just do it first and struggle and build my own questions and then figure out, okay, how do I want to go about now doing it? And a lot of times I'll end up struggling so much that I'll decide, okay, this is definitely way above me. I'm not going to be able to teach myself. I probably should sign up for a class or get with some other people or be a little bit more structured and at least in how I get started in this new endeavor. But to be able to take a bunch of sample experiences, whether it's branching simulations or whatever, and just start doing them, to me, that's always the direction I like to go. And then the learning part of it, the micro learning, the little bits that help answer my questions feed into that. And so my question would be then is, okay, so we've got this great definition of micro learning, what it is, what it isn't, the facts, busting a myth. How do we use it to solve some of the problems? So you mentioned like sales training and the M&Ms, fantastic. Do you have any other sort of stories you can share?
Oh, well, yeah. So I've used it before within our own industry. So I was working with an organization and I could say their name because they gave me permission. So I was working with Zappos, and Zappos was looking to upskill their instructional designers. And so what we did was I created a workshop especially for them. It was a 2-day workshop, just a regular old school type of workshop, because I say old school in that it was face-to-face, not old school in delivery.
Right.
We did a lot of rapid prototyping and that sort of thing, and it was a lot of fun. Well, what happened is that we came back then, and I fed them micro-learning elements for the next 4 weeks. So we used Slack as a delivery mechanism.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it worked out wonderfully. So every week I sent them new pieces of information that then culminated into a larger challenge. So they've got micro learning on design, and I used some Kathy Moore stuff actually. So they got micro learning on design elements, on graphics, on color choices, on creating simulations and gamifications, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those little pieces of micro learning they were able to learn and do from, and they were very short, 5 minutes in length. Every week watching the micro learning and maybe applying that to their assigned challenge might have taken them, 15 or 20 minutes in total. And it was used then, if you think about it this way, it's used to augment your macro programs. Now they can still go in. So if they had a new instructional designer come in today, they would still be able to participate in those micro learning objects without necessarily having attended the 2-day workshop prior to it. They would still be able to learn some really fun and key things in regards to e-learning development, by participating in that. So that's another example.
That's great. And let me just ask, and you can decline if you'd like to, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if could we dig a little bit deeper and go into some of the specifics about it? So sort of tactically, like, did you, like, the content, was it you said you used Slack, did you use video, was it text-based? Like, how did you and then did you build a website and all the micro learning stuff was just there and they could search for it? Or so how did that all work? What were the pieces and what did that look like? If you don't mind sharing.
No, I don't mind sharing. I use Slack for a reason. One is because it aggregates conversation. And two, it also aggregates files. So I didn't have to worry about creating a website where I would have to upload the files. In Slack, it automatically uploads the files for you. I mean, it keeps a special spot. So you could click on files. There are all the files. Also, the other reason why I didn't need to create a website is, as I said, at the end of all this, they had a challenge. They were supposed to put together, some work for peer review.
Okay.
And so I created a Slack channel that said final product. So there they each uploaded. So I didn't have to worry about hosting issues. I didn't have to worry about whether or not they were uploading something that was compatible to something. They created their work, they uploaded the link, and everyone was able to see it. It was so easy and seamless. I really actually was pretty, floored by how easy the whole thing worked out.
So you used Slack like an LMS, basically, right? Like that was the core place where everything happened and where everybody communicated, or was there?
Yeah. That was the core communication channel. So there were different channels that for, like I said, so we had 4 weeks. So there was a channel for week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. There was a channel there was an Ask Me Anything channel for them to ask me anything. So you can ask the subject matter expert or whatever. There was a separate channel just for them to talk, because if you can imagine, that's a really great culture, and sidebar conversations are a big thing. So you had to have a spot for them to be able to have those sidebar conversations.
Yep.
So they did that. And then there was also another area for additional resources. So if somebody spotted something while they were doing their work online, or if they found a book or they found an article, they could load that into that additional resource section. They still have access to that area today. So they go, and every once in a while, and that was, at the beginning of the year. No, it was at the end of last year. So every now and again, I'm still getting pinged that somebody has been in and downloaded something, so that tells me that we've got some evergreen content there.
Yeah, my gosh, that's fantastic. It's the first time, you're the first, and maybe somebody else has done this, but you're the first that I've heard that's used Slack in this way. I think it's awesome.
Oh, it was awesome. It was a great experience. I am not, I don't know what people think about what I do, but I am not a techie person by any stretch of the imagination. That's what I have you for, Brent. So you find ways. Anyone who's read the blog post that went up yesterday, I say in there specifically, you have to find what you are good at and build on what you're good at, and what you are not good at, find someone to help you. Yeah. And so my whole purpose at that point was I knew I did not want to set up a website for them. I knew that right off the bat because that was just too much maintenance for me. And then they'd have to whitelist it with their IT department and all that other stuff. So it's like, okay, I wanted something more simple. And so when I looked at Slack, my brain just said, click, 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 click. It can be used for this. And it worked out.
That's awesome. So I have a few more questions I want to ask about that specifically, but I'm going to hold that thought because I'm going to take a quick 30-minute break. So jump into the chat if there's anything that we missed or anything like that, and then I'll be right back.
He'll be right back. I'm going to answer some questions. Let's see what's in here.
So everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It is so great to have so many people here hanging out with us today and actually all week. You guys have been fantastic guests and been fantastic in the chat. First of all, let me just say thank you also to everybody being following our rules of engagement and being nice to each other and supporting each other and sharing your knowledge with everybody that's here. It's so important, and because that's really the core of why we're here and what we do. So thank you all so much. And those of you that go the extra mile and help out as volunteers and do so much extra work behind the scenes, you guys have no idea how much Luis and I really, really appreciate that. And so much of what we do here couldn't get done without you. So thank you all so much for doing that. Tomorrow, like I said before, we've got this fantastic panel of women coming up that are going to be talking about the issues that you deal with in the workplace. And I think it's going to be an extremely important conversation to have. And so I'm very, very excited that, again, so many, volunteers decided we wanted to have this conversation. And Luis and I are happy to let you, utilize this platform as a place to have that conversation. So it's going to be a really, really great opportunity for everybody to learn a lot. And I'm looking forward to it as well. Again, we also have the Slack. Speaking of Slack, we have our own Slack group here. So TLD Chat is tldchat.slack.com is our, I believe is the URL for that. If you want to join, we do have a link that you can click on to get that invitation and join us there as well. TLD Cast and TLD Chat are free and open for anybody that wants to be a part of this community, anybody that wants to be engaged with us. We welcome you to hang out here. We know you can't be here every day. Everybody's got jobs. Everybody's got work to do. Totally understand that. But the reason why we kick this off is to just be consistent in and knowing, just so you know that we're here for at least 1 hour every single day, either for some professional development for yourself or maybe some free consulting. We've got such a brain trust of fantastic professionals that hang out here. And so it's a great opportunity for everybody to help everyone else in the community just rise up and improve their careers, learn more, get better at what they do. And as we help each other, even in small ways, just teaching people how to use Slack, teaching people how to engage, answering the easiest questions can be so motivating to people that are up against the wall or struggling with a problem. So thanks everybody for not only coming here and learning and getting a lot of information, but sharing that knowledge that you have and those experiences. We really appreciate that and could not do it without you. So before we jump back in and track a little bit deeper in this direction, I want to give a quick shout out to some of our sponsors. As many of you know, Mindspace was a great sponsor for TLDC 18. They sponsored the reception for us, and they continue to be such a great company to work with. And they're doing some fantastic work in just trying to understand the learning community. You can find out more by going to their website. Of course, TechSmith is here with us as often as they can be on Video Fridays and talking tech with us and geeking out with us. And doing some Dungeons and Dragons hosting for us at the event, and hopefully at Learning Solutions too, which will be a hoot. If you don't like to geek out on that level of nerdiness, that's okay. I know not everybody does, but tons of fun. And of course, Andrew from Designing Digitally, and the Intuition folks, and Versal, everybody that jumps in and sponsors us. We really, really appreciate that as well. And if you would like to become a sponsor, let us know. Or if you're working for a company where you think they could get a lot of value out of being a part of this community, just connect with us. And we've come a long way in figuring out how to best do sponsorships and engage sponsors into the community, the vendor community, connecting them with the practitioners. So we think we have a pretty good model in place now, and we're really excited about it. So if you know anybody, just get them hooked up with us, and we will be happy to get connected as always. So, all right, let's get back to this great conversation. I want to know, first of all, did you see anything in the chat?
Oh yeah, they're asking lots of questions, and so that's great. And so and most of the questions are around Slack and how I used it for this particular, how I used it for Zappos and to create a successful environment for them. Some of the conversations were, well, you know, how do I teach people to use Slack? And I was just typing this in for Deborah, so I'll just go ahead and answer it. So Deborah, the key here is, first off, understanding your audience. So with a client like Zappos, they're very tech savvy. So I really didn't have a large issue, you know, working with them. Now, I have worked with other clients that weren't quite as on the ball, you know, from a technical perspective, or they were used to using a different tool like Skype or something along those lines. And so what you do is you crowdsource the videos from YouTube that you think are going to be the most beneficial for them, and then you upload that into Slack. So here's my take on technology training, if you will allow me a short soapbox.
Please.
Is that you know I'm going to take it anyway, so you just might as well step aside. So my take on technology training is that is some of the worst training out there. No offense to those of you who are listening who create tech training. It's horrible. Why is that? It's because we teach the technology. Stop teaching the technology. Give them the job aids that will allow them to work through the technology. That's how people learn. So you give them the videos, you give them the job aids, you give them the checklist or what have you, and say, okay, what I would like everyone to do is I'd like everyone now to go into Slack, and I'd like you to post a comment on this channel. Here is the job aid that's going to help you do that. And then force them to work through the job aid and then ask questions afterwards. Because what happens is that when we teach it, then people will be like, yeah, I got it. Click, 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 click. I'll just call her or him when I have a question. And then we get all shocked and amazed. They're calling me. It's like, well, yes, you didn't teach them anything. All you taught them was to go to you when you have questions. So the same thing would apply here when we're talking about tools like Slack. Send them the pieces of information, which I did do for Zappos, you know, because I wanted them to be able to do certain things within it, like how to upload their projects, you know. So I sent them a little quick down and dirty, here's how you're going to upload your projects, and sent it to them. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time teaching them how to use the tool. I gave them assignments that taught them how to use the tool. So that's how I handled that, you know, and you know what? People will hate it. I'll be honest with you. They'll be like, can't I just get a class for this? No, we're not doing that, because we really want you to learn how to use the tool.
That's what I was just going to say. So I'm curious to know I don't know if this is from a business perspective or how I would phrase this, but how did you convince them that, because this is very different, right? And people do say, can't I just sit in the class, and can't you just give me the PowerPoint slides when you're done, and then I'll just reference them, and then give me some links, and then, you know, and then we're done. Like, how did you convince, you know, management or those that were signing off on this to agree? And even if maybe there was some pushback, like from the learners or whatever, saying this is too weird, we don't want to actually put effort in, we just want to go sit in a class like we always do. Like, how do you convince them otherwise?
Well, and thank you for that. I didn't get a whole lot of pushback from the participants themselves.
You did not?
But I did not. No, not at all. They did have questions. Some of them were a little confused at first. And so it took a touch of me going, well, try this, try that. But overall, it was a very positive experience. Now, as far as management was concerned, that was a different story, as one can imagine. Yeah. So they were like, well, can't we just, put this all in the workshop? No, because, well, one, you already set the parameter around the length and scope of the workshop. So I'm going to deal with that. But my question to them always is, your measurement of success. This is what you articulated to me that success would look like at the end of this. At the end of this, they will be able to do this. Okay, in order for me to get them there, these areas are needed. Now, maybe I misheard you. Maybe that's not your measure of success. And if that's not your measure of success, then we can take these elements out. So help me understand where you want to go from here. And they were like, well, we really want them to, think more. To the Zappos team, creativity was a huge thing.
Yeah.
They wanted them to be more creative in what they were doing with their e-learning designs. Okay, well, creativity takes practice. And it takes practice beyond 2 days. So what if I put together these lessons, and I showed them the lessons before we went live with it, of course, and said these lessons will all take them down a creativity road. This is where the lessons each connect. And they were totally on board with that. Once you have a real business conversation with them and put it in their laps and say, this was the goal that you articulated. So okay. So if you want this goal to happen, then this is what we're going to need to do.
Yeah, it's so common for us, and this is just the historical baggage that we deal with as a profession, is that we do an event, a workshop, right? And then we go in, we deliver it, and then boom, we're out and we're done. And that's it. And then people don't follow through and they don't, do the work, or there's no level of success. But we've always measured ourselves as against just that event. Now that we as an industry are moving more towards looking at the business and how do we impact, and that's the goal, right? What sort of needles are we moving on the business? It does require us to also do the focus a little bit more on the idea that learning is a long-term process and that we need ways to do that. And thankfully, it's this tech that can help us do that. So you did answer one question, another question that I had. So you do a workshop, and then the Slack activities and the interactions there is like you would consider that maybe reinforcements or sort of post-event.
Yeah, it's me using the microlearning to augment the learning.
Okay. And is there anything that comes before that, before the workshop? Or do you start?
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. So there is I use the Slack channel as a green room of sorts. So before you come into the workshop, let's get to know each other. And it's something that is non-formal. Also, if I give and not necessarily to Zappos, but to any of my, always setting up some kind of green room before any workshop that I go into with a client. So, and now my practice has been to set it up in Slack, where I can, and so I set up this green room, and dependent upon the audience, if there's pre-work, I tell them there is pre-work here that would be important to the client. Also, I'm very clear that if you don't do the pre-work, sucks to be you, because I don't teach backwards. Okay, and I tell them that I might not use that exact vocabulary, but I tell them, if you don't do the pre-work, that's your decision. That just means then that you're going to have extra work to do during lunch. So I let them know that they aren't going to get away with not doing the pre-work, because the pre-work is going to be essential. And I also tell them, so that means then when I start a workshop, I say, okay, so this was the pre-work assignment, this, and this. If you did it, awesome, because now you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about here in the next half hour. If you didn't, you better pay somebody to be your buddy right now. And listen in, right? And so there's always that green room type of conversation. So with Zappos, I did that same sort of thing. So we set it up for them to be able to start communications. I required for them to ask questions. I did not require them to find answers. I required them to ask questions. And so that means that on my end, it takes more work because I have to answer those questions.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I get paid for. That's what we all get paid for, right? So that was the fun part of it, because you never know what sorts of questions are going to come up.
Yeah, it's so how do you manage something like this? So we'll switch this over to sort of a contracting question. We do have as part of our members our members package, I guess, if you will, we do have a contracting channel within our Slack group, and we talk about contract type stuff. So share with us how that's different for you, because like I said, it's pretty, in the past, building e-learning or building a training event is very cut and dry. You build it for the client, you go in and you teach it, you deliver it, and then you're out, clean cut. When you're talking about building a longer term solution or a longer term engagement, how does that shift your thinking and your management of your own time and your consulting business?
I'm trying to process your question. So you're asking me, if I heard you correctly, you're asking me, when you do a workshop, it's a finite period. You're going to take a month to create a workshop, deal me out after we're done, versus if I do something that's augmented or longer scope. How do I plan for that? Is that your question?
Yeah. And then it's because it's different, right? I mean, I think and I guess the reason why I'm asking is there are a lot of consultants out there who get into consulting in our business as just developers, right? And so they're very used to the very project-based, here's the course is now done, the course is now delivered, and we're done. What, does that reinforcement work in Slack? Do you have a particular date that you end it with the client and say, okay, now I'm done, and then you turn it over to them and clean break, or do you hang on?
No, there's a time when we're done. It's usually 30 days after.
Okay.
So the last lesson drops whenever it's going to drop. And I should also mention that was accompanied by an email reminder. So I set up automated email drips to send to them and say lesson 1, because they would receive a notification from Slack anyway, but I just wanted to be sure that the reminder was there. So I did set that up. So the last lesson would drop on week 4. I'd say a formal goodbye. I'd send them a final email that said, don't forget, here's the link for all the resources. Don't forget, here's the link for all the conversations. This is how you download, blah, 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 blah. You have 30 days to access this material where you still might have my attention. Where you can go in. Yeah, where you can go in and you can ping me.
Okay.
And I'll go in. But after that, I'm out.
Okay.
And then I'm always happy to renegotiate that with the client and say, if you want me to monitor this website for another period of time, then you'll have to pay me. So then that's something that gets invoiced back out. I haven't had anybody take me up on that, because usually the 30 days is good enough for them to be able to get any last I need to knows out. I do get the occasional email, but I don't charge them for that. And that's in my contract. My contract is that I don't charge for emails and I don't charge for text messages.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, no, I just wanted to be clear on that for everyone, just so that, because I could tell people's wheels were spinning probably and wondering, how does this happen? Like, do you just then become a consultant to these people for the rest, forever and ever and ever, but only
for it's like a retainer, if you will, for 30 days afterwards.
Okay.
So, and I do have the odd out client that uses me on a retainer basis, but that's a whole different animal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. What about measurement? So I'm certain we've got a bunch of people in here that are thinking to themselves, okay, Miss Shannon Tipton, you're using Slack and you're all cool and everything and using the cool new tools, but I got you. You can't, how do you measure success? How do you know people have been successful using that crazy tool?
You want to push that button, do you? Okay.
I know somebody wants to, so I'm just channeling their thought process from the chat.
Okay. Well, the measure on this particular event, the measure was the final project. That's it. So if they completed it, and they completed it to the level of satisfaction of their boss, not me. I'm not the judge and jury of these things. Cool. So their boss said that they wanted creative work. So those projects went to their boss, and their boss said whether or not they felt that was creative work. It doesn't matter whether or not they used this font or that font or green or blue or red, whether or not they felt it was creative. And of course I offered my input. But that was the measurement of success. And then I also did track because they wanted to award people who were highly active in the Slack channel.
Okay.
So I did track who was active and who was not, but I did also send in a qualifier. Just this person was not as active as that person, but their contributions were significantly more valuable. So that's the part that that goes in, and where you're having a one-on-one conversation afterwards. I don't believe that we can just say, tick, they participated. Okay, that's my measurement. No, we microlearning to me. So when we're thinking about microlearning is all about performance support. I'm giving them tools for 4 weeks to help them do a job that they need to do. I'm not going to measure them on that. I'm not going to measure them on whether or not they're using the performance support tools that I asked them to use. The measurement is the project. And all of my workshops, 99.9% of my workshops are typically project-based. So the measurement that comes out of this is and so it's not about, whether or not I gave them a test or a quiz or something like that, at the end of it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome though. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Because
I win.
You win. We tracked your engagement today, and you win. It's valuable. So let's see. Does anybody else in the chat you want to drop any questions? I was kind of following Mike's train of thought there in the chat. I don't see any in the Ask a Question section currently because we're getting close to the top of the hour. So we're going to have to start wrapping up. But we definitely have time for one more question. If anybody in the chat wants to drop something in, or did you see anything, Shannon? Did I miss one? Or
yeah. So Dana, you manually tracked importance of contribution. Yes, I did. That's why they pay me the big bucks. You betcha. So I read every single comment that came in, and that was a class of 15 people. So I read every single comment. I answered every single question. I looked through every single project. So that way I could have a determination as to whether or not the dots were connecting. So this way I could go back to somebody and say, hey, Alex, you seemed lost. Are you okay? Just like you would if you were doing stand-up, so just because the modality has changed, the techniques don't.
So really what you're talking about is kind of shifting over to a coaching model, right? Mm-hmm. A little bit?
For this particular case, yeah. So they were the micro-learning. If I go back to that, the micro-learning fed was informed by the workshop, which was then fed to the students in an augmented style. My job was to sit back and to, watch the ripples happen, as I dropped each microlearning element into the pond. And then to provide scaffold learning. Remember that, folks. Remember, from your days in, an instructional design class, scaffold learning. So this is all about the scaffold learning, and taking it up a notch.
It's awesome. We have, Kara did drop a great question, and I should just make this my standard question at the end of every conversation. And that is, what has been your favorite training project?
I'd have to say the Zappos one was my favorite one. I mean, all my babies are my favorite.
So was this the first time that you had implemented this model using Slack and kind of this format, or?
I've used it before, but not on this scale.
Okay.
To be honest, so I've used it in a week afterwards or 2 weeks afterwards. But this is the first time where I used it to fully utilize my thoughts around microlearning and using it in Slack. And, we just had a lot of fun doing it. And I think it's up to us to set the tone of the expectation and also the tone of the environment in those methods, if you will. So we can make a Slack channel really, boring, or you can make a Slack channel fun. It's up to you and your personality to be able to manage that and to engage people enough to come back. Right. So that's what really made it fun. Plus, the personality of the group, the willingness of leadership to say, okay, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. I'm currently working right now with a steel company. So really different dynamic, but they're really interested. So they want to use, they're willing to use Slack, but they really want me to use Google Hangouts. And so it's like, oh, let's see if we can make that work. So it's all in the conversation that you have with them, so building that trust.
And like we've always said, right? I mean, it's less about the technology, more about the people and the design and what it is that you're trying to do. You can do this same approach and this same methodology or same framework on multiple different kinds of technologies. So I think Slack is a great one. I can just totally visualize how that's working through, using the Google Hangouts or the Google,
tools,
tools in general. I could see that working, but it might be a little bit.
It might be clunky. I'm not so enthused about that. I'm still going to try and push them towards Slack, but using the reason why they want to use Google is because a couple of years ago, I did a workshop with them on how to use Google Docs. And so now they want to use Google for everything, and it's like, yay! I'm happy for that. But now let's see if we can, marry the two. So I'm going to use. I think what I've settled on is going to use Google Docs as a collaborative forum that they are then going to upload and access, because you can connect. By the way, you can connect Slack to Google.
Yeah.
And you can connect Slack to Google Docs. So that's the modality that I'm going to move into.
That's awesome. And just along those lines, everybody, I just started a shared document in Google Docs, and I shared it in Slack. That is our software list. So any software that you're using or getting mentioned, I set up a couple tabs, and just for us to keep tabs on some of this new stuff and have a place to go and something to organize it. So jump in there and feel free to edit to your heart's contents. But we're out of time today, Shannon.
No.
That hour goes by way too fast.
Yeah, it does. And I'm just having a lot of fun with you guys. I'm always pleased to be here and talk with everyone and have a chat.
Yes, for sure. And now that all the bandwidth issues have now been solved, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
I know. Well, no, let's not say we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Oh, right.
Let's just say we didn't have to worry about it today.
Yeah, right.
So, for those of you, for some reason, AT&T happens to think my neighborhood is Siberia, and I can't get decent internet connection half the time. So we did well.
Yeah. Hey, it worked out fantastic. I love it. Hey, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me at learningrebels.com. my blog is there. All of the information about my business is there. Obviously, Facebook page, Learning Rebels Facebook, and Tipton, STIPTON on Twitter. I like to say that if you can't find me, we have bigger issues in the world.
Easy to track down.
I am everywhere.
Yeah, and if you're having problems tracking her down, you can just reach out to myself or anybody here on TLDC, and we'll help figure it all out for you and get you connected. But she's right. If you do have to come to us to find her, then we'll have to have
zombie apocalypse is hit.
We'll have to have more conversations.
That's
this was
right.
A lot of fun, Shannon. Thank you so much for doing this today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope that I got to everybody's questions. If you still have burning questions, where do they put those, Brent?
They go to the Slack group. So into the TLD Slack. I think if somebody has the link they can drop in there, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll go continue the conversation over there. But for now, I'm going to close out your video, but I'm still going to be live. You can jump into the chat and say hi to some folks. But I will talk to you later. Thanks again.
Woo!
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out today. What a great conversation. Thank you again, Shannon, for hanging out with us here today. Thanks, Louise, for dropping that Slack link in there. I forgot to mention that Craig was going to be dropping out early today. He's got some meetings he had to go to. So awesome stuff. We had some great focused conversation around the micro learning today, which is awesome. In general, we haven't done that yet, and so we definitely need to have Shannon back and drill down even more deeply and see if we can help some folks in the group, in the community, maybe take advantage of some of these ideas, some of the ideas that Kathy shared yesterday, some of the great ideas that Shannon shared today. All of these new ideas that are actually really working. And it's not just us pontificating about theoretically using Slack for training or, all of these other tools, but there now are actual case studies that we can look to and practitioners in our field that have done this kind of work. And so this is where the value of something like TLDC gets really exciting. And I really start to look forward to all the value that we can provide to the community and help everybody get better at what they do. So tons of fun. Again, tomorrow, I'm really, really looking forward to our event tomorrow, TLDcast, with our fantastic WOW panel, Women on Work. Is going to be a great one. I hope everybody has a fantastic International Women's Day. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We will see you all tomorrow.